All right, today we're going to dive into something really fascinating, an incredibly detailed rule from the Talmud that gets into temple sacrifices, improper thoughts, and this amazing search for perfect logic. Seriously, it's a journey right into the heart of how ancient scholars tried to map out the mechanics of the divine.
So just imagine for a second, you're in a world where every single action, every intention in a sacred ritual has huge cosmic weight. Now what happens if just one wrong thought pops into your head and threatens to crash the whole ceremony? That is the high-stakes puzzle we are tackling today.
And this isn't just some hypothetical problem, It has a name. Let's get into the ritual glitch at the very center of our story.
It's called Piggul. And get this, it's not about a mistaken action, it's about a mistaken thought. If the priest, right in the middle of a key part of the sacrifice, thinks about eating the offering's meat at the wrong time, that thought alone can make the whole thing Piggul, totally invalidated and forbidden to eat.
But, and this is where it gets really interesting, the sages of the Mishnah realized that this glitch, this Piggul, doesn't affect everything in the same way. Some parts of the sacrifice are just immune. So the big question is, why?
Well, the answer lies in this beautiful and, frankly, super elegant piece of logic they came up with, which we can call the permitter principle. The Mishnah lays out the core rule right here. Piggul status can only happen to something that is permitted by something else. So the whole game is figuring out what it means to be a permitters versus something that is permitted.
Okay, the best way to picture this with a simple analogy. Think of a key and a door. The permitter is the key. Its whole job is to unlock the next step of the ritual. So for example, sprinkling an animal's blood, that's the key, unlocks the ability to eat its meat. The permitted is the door, the meat itself, which is now unlocked. Now the Piggul glitch, that can only mess with the door, never the key. The key itself is totally immune.
And you can see this principle in action. The Mishnah actually gives us a list of items that are immune to Piggul, and it's because they are all keys. The handful of flour? It's the key that permits the rest of the meal offering. The blood? That's the ultimate key. It permits almost everything else. They are the activators, not the things being activated.
But of course, a rule this important was just begging to be stress-tested. So scholars pushed its logic to the absolute limit, which naturally led to some really fascinating disagreements.
I mean, the whole key and door thing seems pretty straightforward, right? But what about these super complex rituals with tons of steps and different components? How do you know if something is a key or a door or maybe something else entirely? This is where the debate really heats up.
Okay, take the case of the special oil used in the purification ritual for a leper. Is it vulnerable to Piggul? On one side, you've got Rabbi Meir. He argues yes. He says the blood of the guilt offering is the key that permits the oil to be used. That makes the oil a door, which means it can become Piggul. But the other rabbis disagree. They come back and say, no. The oil is an essential part of the ritual itself. It's not some secondary thing that gets unlocked by the blood. For them, it's not a door, so it's immune.
I mean, look at that. Two completely different conclusions, both starting from the exact same principle. This shows us something really profound. For these sages, getting the logic right wasn't just some academic game. It was a sacred duty. They had to understand the precise mechanics of the divine service.
So now let's go even deeper. The Talmud itself takes one of those exempt items from our list, that handful of flour, and puts it under an incredible logical microscope.
So the scholar Ula makes the statement that, on the surface, seems pretty simple. He says if a priest has that improper Piggul thought while handling the special handful of flour, and then he places that handful on the altar, boom, its Piggul status just vanishes. It's purified.
But wait a minute. The Gemara immediately jumps in and asks, what's the point of this teaching? We already know from the Mishnah we just looked at that the handful is a key. It's immune to Piggul in the first place. So what new information could Ula possibly be adding here?
So the Talmud tries out a theory. Maybe Ula is just teaching a general rule. Once something invalid goes up on the altar, you don't take it down, but that gets shot down immediately. Another Mishnah already teaches that, so nope, that can't be it.
Okay. Theory number 2. What if Ula means that if this handful accidentally falls off the altar, you have to put it back on? But no, that's rejected too. The very same Mishnah that says what goes up, stays up, also says what falls off, stays off. So at this point, Ula's statement seems totally useless.
So, if Ula's teaching isn't just repeating old news, what are we missing?
Well, the answer, like it so often is in this kind of deep analysis, is hiding in a loophole. Ula's teaching isn't some broad rule. It's designed for one incredibly specific, unaddressed scenario where a single tiny detail changes absolutely everything.
And that one tiny detail? It's the altar's fire. This is the missing piece of the entire puzzle. It's not just about the handful being placed on the altar. It's about what happens next.
And here it is, the final ruling in all its glorious specificity. Ula's teaching only applies if this exact sequence of events happens. 1. The handful is put on the altar. 2. The fire catches and burns even a tiny part of it. 3. Then it accidentally falls off. In that one hyper-specific case, because the fire officially claimed it for the altar, its Piggul status is gone, the normal rule is overridden, and the whole handful has to be put back.
And what's really amazing here is that Ula's teaching makes it clear this applies even to something like a pile of loose flour, a collection of separate little particles, not just a solid object like an animal limb. If the fire touches one single grain, it consecrates the entire pile. The logical integrity holds up even at the most granular level imaginable.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This incredibly intense, microscopic analysis is all about a ritual that hasn't been performed in nearly 2,000 years. So what does this incredible dedication to logical precision, to closing every conceivable loophole, tell us about that universal human drive to find order, consistency, and deep meaning in the systems we hold sacred?